everyone. I went to Kumoricon this year, as I do every year, so it's time for my con report video. Um, let's start off. The convention this year was on the weekend of November 8th through the 10th, with the 11th being Veterans Day. So nice for me in terms of a work scheduling standpoint, because I only had to take the one day, use PTO for the one day, and have the day after off, so I can do these usual con recovery things, both in terms of mental and psychological recovery, the whole con come down, and also the other part of the con come down of coming to terms with the laundry that you have left of all the dirty clothes from the convention, and that you need to go, wash and all of that. So that's what there is all of that going on. Took a few notes on some of the panels that I went to. Let me also pull up my schedule, the guidebook app. A few general convention notes from this year. AMV room was back. We had back in Vancouver, they had a AMV room, and in one of the hotels for part of it, and like that, and the multiple viewing rooms made for a nice place where when you're in between panels, or if you have a gap between panels and you don't want to go through Artist Alley again, you don't necessarily want to do manga reading room, it gives you a place to sit down, get off your feet, relax, and watch something, and still be kind of participating in the anime environment and that sort of thing, in ways that the other other ways like might not necessarily be. I mean, yes, you can also theoretically just drop into a panel, but like depending on how the schedule goes, like say you're have an hour between your panels, and because of how those other two panels go, like other two panels are on the half hour or stuff like that, it doesn't quite work out that way, or what have you. We give you like it's a nice place to like sit down and collect yourself in that respect, and not necessarily enforced, well, not enforced, but the more deliberately silent environment of a manga library. So like that was a very nice thing to have. I was very glad they did that. I did miss opening ceremonies this year. I feel bad about that. This is just this is a me time management problem. Badge pickup on the Thursday before the convention was fairly straightforward and uneventful. Where like I'm checking some stuff real quick. Yeah. Where like pretty easy for me to just get in, get my stuff, like pick up my badge and get out. To a certain degree, it helps. Or what may have sped this up ultimately is one decision that was made for the convention is not to put names on the badges, whereas like not printing badges with names on them anymore. So just having stock badges, and then you scan a barcode and associate it with your membership when you go to pick up your badge. There was also a degree of combining the badge pickup line and the pre-reg line. I don't know how well that worked out in the long term, because again, I got there Thursday afternoon after work, and there weren't that many people in line at the time, but also I get off work outside of the rush hour period, so a bit of a wash there. Convention itself, I need to look at the graph to see how attendance is ebbed and flowed. But like, pull up the Kumoricon Wikipedia entry, and then the general Kumoricon site. It looks like we were up from last year. It didn't feel like it. That's not a bad thing necessarily either, because if you have higher membership attendance, um, in terms of tickets memberships sold than the previous year, but you don't feel like the halls are crowded and that sort of thing, it means there is enough for people to do. So props on that front. Uh, and on top of that, like, this feels like a weird thing to say, but like, okay, I'm like, this is the convention that happened directly after the election. Um, Not like the day after, but like the weekend after. And Kumoricon has always generally been a very, and still is, a very LGBT friendly, very people of color friendly convention. Admittedly, from my experience, from a cissexual white guy. But even there, like, still generally known for being an LGBT friendly convention, and with programming tracks that reflect that. So, like, the vibe of the convention was like a little bit like not a little, what was kind of did feel dampened from previous years, um because of like possibly very likely because of that, but it like at the beginning, but it generally kind of picked up. uh it wasn't like at the end of the convention you had people tearfully leaving because they didn't want to have to go back to the nasty really real world out there and the real world problems that are coming down the pipe. But it did feel like, particularly once you got really into the swing of things, later on Friday, and then once you hit Saturday, and you got to hit the top of that bell curve, there's the sense that the everyone's like, I'm here, or my people. It's a safe space. It's a place we can celebrate the things we love, and step away just for this brief moment from the troubles of the world for a bit. And it did really feel like a lot of people like this is really what I need right now. This didn't mean the outside world didn't try to intrude. We had Kumoricon's first god botherer, for lack of a better term, um, evangelical group. The Discord called it protesters, but it's not a protest. It's a, and this was something else another time. But this was a couple of very, very religious guys with a portable battery operated PA system and a huge sign. Um, like, this sign was big enough that I feel like they would have had to have gotten a permit for it. Like, I don't think the man portable signs are something that normally you have to get a permit for, but this was like probably 15 feet high, like the whole total overall thing. Like, this was like big enough that if you climbed on top of a semi tractor trailer, I mean, not 15 feet, but like at least over 10 feet tall. Like, if you climbed on top of a semi tractor trailer rig, um, or if you, not on top, if you put a semi tractor trailer rig next to it, and you put the sky with this sign, the sign would like stick up above the top of the semi rig, on the cab by like a good 3-4 feet. Um, it was enough. Like, we're supposed to get really nasty weather and really heavy wind tomorrow, the day after the convention. If we had started getting like the big bad wind gusts today, this guy would have gone flying. The sign would have gone flying and caused a traffic hazard and maybe an accident. That kind of thing. Um, Highly impractical, this sign. And yeah, I'm not going to say God was on his side for not blowing him into traffic, but I am going to say he was very lucky considering the meteorological and wind situations of that location. Because the convention center, it's a distance away from the river, from and all of that, but not that far away. And all the buildings around this side are kind of low enough where you can get hit by a good gust of that gorge wind coming through. So, yeah, Schmuck was lucky he didn't sailboat. I'm gonna say everything. Last gonna say on that. Dark Horse spun a couple of good panels at the convention with Carl Horn as master of ceremonies for both of them, and sole presenter for both of them. You normally have some other people for other ones, but for these two, flying solo. One on Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken, focusing on the manga, and the other one was the Dark Horse Comics general announcement panel, which, as you mentioned for that one, was rehashing a bunch of stuff that was debuted at Rose City Comic Con, which I don't normally go to because honestly, Rose City Comic Con, like, I never really get a vibe from it of it being a fan con in the same way that something like Kumoricon is. It always feels more industrial and focused on getting autograph signings from celebrities and like finding more ways to perch you from your money. It's, to put this in perspective, like I went to San Diego Comic Con once and I didn't spend a lot of time there. I definitely got hit by autism related nerves and ended up spending a bunch of days feeling sick. But my time I spent on there and going to panels and that sort of thing is, it never really felt like there were a lot of fan panels there, and it felt it was a lot more professional panels. It's companies trying to sell stuff and hype stuff, and again, celebrities from movies and TV and that sort of thing, doing autograph signings to separate you from your money, vendors in the vendor room having convention exclusives, that sort of thing. Whereas at Kumoricon, I think a big part of this as well with Kumo is, when it's going through the dealer's room related to this, like going back to big con stuff, is dealer's room for this year, there had like deal vendors, like businesses vendors, but it did feel, it feels like this year has been, Artist's Alley has been progressively become more and more of the thing, which is not, it's not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I'd almost say it's a good, certainly it's a good thing. But one of the things I've liked about past Kumoricons from their dealer's room is, now some of this may have gone to shifted gears to the swap meet later in the convention, but a big chunk of this is, well, dealers who would be selling manga or DVDs or DVDs and Blu-rays, or in particular, like, oh, we have rare out of print manga, older DVD releases, that sort of thing, aren't really here. There are some there, and I feel like the business, the ones that are more businesses, that focus gets to be more on figures and doujinshi, importing doujinshi and selling that. In some cases, a very significant markup. There was a compilation volume that didn't feel that rare. That's not a case where I took a picture of the cover, I'll admit, to look up later, but it's like, oh yeah, this is $50. I'm like, okay. Oh yeah, because it's a compilation of a bunch of other stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, but like this didn't feel like a small press one. This wasn't like some Dojin circle had reprinted a bunch of their previous Dojins as a as like, okay, we like, oh hey, we've been doing our circle's been doing Dojinshi for 10 years now or 5 years now. So let's do a compilation volume of our last 5 years of comic hit Dojinshi. It didn't feel like that. It felt like like this is an independent thing. It was still like independent, maybe small press thing, but it didn't have the same sort of like fan work vibe kind of thing. So like I don't know. It didn't the $50 price tag didn't felt a bit too it definitely was too rich for my blood there, but also it felt like I don't know. Um in any like in terms of like how legit this price is for the work. Because also like they had their like right behind it, one of the Earth Girls, Yuri manga, and like those are officially licensed, have gotten English releases in print and digital. So like if that one's going like, oh, $50 for the Japanese edition, like, yeah, but I can get the English edition of this for significantly less. Sort of thing. So any case, Azukin panel was great. Fun learning about some other various outside periphery stuff about this. Like the mangaka had previously been an amateur animator. Um, like I didn't know when I did the podcast on Azukin, which I will try to remember to put a link to in the show notes in the doobly doo, was that the show only covered the first 3 volumes of the manga, which by me going, wait, and we're on in the U.S. are in volume 6, volume 7 as was mentioned by um was mentioned was had just been like given the approval, the green light to go to press. So I'm like, that's a whole second season's worth of material there. I need to start reading this manga now. I'm really interested in seeing this. Also, he did show the trailer for the live action version, which I may have seen a while back, but I'd forgotten. Like, I do also kind of want to see what the live action version of this looks like. I'm interested to see how they do certain things. There was fun little fan sub panel on the history or panel on the history of fan subs. This was the general fan history panel. Really nicely done. Very informative. Some of this was stuff I kind of knew already, but it was nice just to see the presentation, see it done well. Props to the person who did that panel. Unfortunately, like they did have his name on their name on it. I got the name of their Tumblr. But if this panel comes up at your local convention, definitely check it out. This does feel like something that when we get the occasional anime lockdown online convention would make a good material for an anime lockdown presentation. I did do a couple 18 plus things on Saturday. Also wrap things up for a bit. Tail end of my Friday was AMV competition, as I normally go to. Other quick note, because I'm going to my thing, because I did go to one of the AMV theater presentation things for that programming track. One of the things that they did for the AMV theaters, rather than just being set up the programming playlist, hit play, watch it go, they did have people, a guy minding the not minding, but like they had a curator and a series of curators going through who've set up each block and give an introduction to each video. For a couple of them, like for example, there's a thing called AMV Show and Tell. They would have the creators of the videos be present and talk about each video before it played. There was a make your panel that they held in that room later, which I ended up missing, on making your own on AMV creation, which I wish I'd had the chance to catch. But otherwise, like that particular approach for doing an AMV room is interesting, and I like that. And I don't know if other conventions do this, but if they don't, they should. It makes for a very nice twist on the concept. I almost wish for our viewing room, when they like having a little bit of not necessarily curation, but like a slight lead in when they're changing series or whatever. Like, hey, our next show is this, and we picked it because X or Y. Like, here's the thing we think is interesting about it. That would be interesting and neat, and puts a nice personalized touch on everything. Particularly when you only have one AMV room. That makes for a nice little thing. Well, the two 18 plus panels I went to, we went to Saturday. Panel on, first, forget the 18 plus stuff. Elisa Friedman of University of Oregon was back as a sort of expert guest of honor, cultural guest of honor. She's giving a variety of panels on various cultural points, and all of them are good. Not just going to say generally good. They are all they are in general good. They don't have to do specialization of what is less so or anything like that. They're all good. If Elisa Friedman comes to your convention and is putting on a panel, you should go. Because she's local to Oregon, for Kumoricon, she tends to have basically gets her own programming track, which is solid. And honestly, if places like in other conventions, if you have a university where there is a Japanese studies track or professor of Japanese studies, someone who covers Japanese cultural stuff and can give larger cultural context to things you see in anime and manga, besides what you just generally pick up from Japanese current events news articles on Anime News Network or that sort of thing, giving them an opportunity to have a programming track of just general Japanese modern culture stuff outside of anime, in terms of politics and all sorts of other things, it's a wonderful thing to have, especially because ideally you want to have a certain number of people coming to conventions who are not just new to your conventions, but ideally are relatively new to the hobby. They've come new to the fandom. They've watched some anime. They're going to the convention to learn more, or they are the parents of someone who is steeped in the hobby, but they themselves are less so. It gives them an opportunity to go to these panels and learn something. Really good thing to have. Another panel on basically the anime influences on the of Dune on anime. Some of these are like the obvious ones in terms of like when you look at Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, and you look at Dune, there's like a thing that the Dune, both the English and Japanese releases came well before Nausicaa came out, with enough enough time gap between them, where there is an opportunity for a degree of cultural permutation, cultural influence, to come from them, or to link them together. It's kind of an obvious fit. They even have ecological parallels, in terms of Dune was very much originally conceived as, with Frank Herbert initially kind of thinking this as this big epic saga of the fall of a galactic empire is built around the seed of a ecological story. And there's Nausicaa is a tremendously ecological work, environmentally focused work. So that's there's a lot of other big hooks there. It's a really good panel. Again, this is one of those things where if this guy gets to do this on an anime lockdown, or he's doing this in another convention near you, absolutely go do it. Go see it. There was I was able to make it into the voice actor panel from the convention, like one of the voice actor panels, which was basically the Johnny Young Bosch and David Matrenga panel. Johnny Bosch, both of them longtime veterans of anime voice acting. and both of them are in Trigun Stampede. Johnny reprising his role as Vash, and Matrenga as the new Wolfwood. Took questions about the series, took questions about voice acting in general and other roles. I did get a chance to ask about a question about, speaking of another work that I discussed on the podcast, Akira, and Johnny taking over the role of Shotaro Kaneda in Akira. And I learned a couple things which they did not put in the audio, in the making of stuff on the Blu-ray, or Blu-ray and from the earlier Pioneer release, about how that, for example, we didn't know that at the time, or I didn't know at the time that Katsuhiro Otomo didn't like the streamlined dub. He didn't like it at all. And part of the idea behind the Pioneer dub was basically, hey, we're going to redo this with one that that the director actually likes. And that was a definite moment of had a bunch of things click into place. They talked about some stuff, for specific examples, for example, where in the original streamlined dub, when Kaneda crashes, I forget the guy's name, Yamagata crashes Yamagata's bike into the wall. He says, in the Japanese version and in the new dub, he says, I'm sending him his wheels. They don't have that line in the original streamlined version. And Bosch comments that when he watched the film originally, he was a little confused, but because he, like a lot of people, had seen it before, even before he'd gotten into dubbing anime, because it's in a weird way a massive cultural touchstone, even though it is only really considered a quote unquote sacred text within a niche fandom. And he didn't quite get that scene. And then when it came to doing the redub, and he got the line and he had the context, like, this actually, this makes more sense now. And having this new dub felt like it gave him more oomph to the character in a lot of respects. So that was fun. And after that, then we got into the two 18 plus things I went to. So one was so there was a panel titled Shibari, Japanese rope bondage art. And it's a Shibari performance. And I didn't know what that was or what that entailed. All the parties involved were nobody was naked or anything like this, but it was it is a BDSM performance, and it was very interesting. I tried, I'm on YouTube. My channel's not monetized, but I'm kind of limited to how much I can talk about this, because there are I still have to deal with YouTube content restrictions. So I will just say that the describing what Shibari entails, Shibari in performance entails, is different than what you think. There's a lot of care and attention going on, because it's a lot riskier than you think. There was a Q&A at the end, and they talked about some of the stuff in terms of the risks and the dangers that come with it, because this was definitely the two people involved, basically their general, the thing that they put forward is very much, look, we're experienced at this, in a I am guys put forward his bona fides that he teaches rigging, The model has been the model who's being tied up has done this a bunch before, and they have both have very like close trust and understanding between them, which you need to have for any sort of BDSM relationship, and interprofessional or otherwise. And with and a, this is and as part of this, it's just a matter of trust. It's also a matter of having a very close understanding of what you're doing with the human body and what you and as the person who's doing the rigging and as the person who being rigged, what this understanding of what your body feels like and that sort of thing. Probably one of like the things that came up in particular that I hadn't thought about is when you think about bondage and that sort of thing. What you normally think about is air circulation and blood circulation, which is something to worry about and pay attention to, and is something we need to learn the warning signs of causing injury and harm and that sort of thing. Absolutely. You also, but and I also noticed that a lot of where shibari is, airways are not in peril. Like the airways are okay, like being kept very clear. Like they don't f around with airways. Um, my own background regarding biology stuff here is my degree is in medical informatics, health, information technology, and health informatics. And part of what came with that degree program is a whole bunch of classes on human biology because they're training you to do IT support for doctors. With that in mind, when the person doing the panel started talking about anatomy, physiological systems, hormone responses, that sort of thing. Okay, I think I agree. Like I can kind of pick up what you're putting down here. I can follow this line of thought reasonably. With that in mind, what came up a bunch with all of the discussion this is like, blood flow and is definitely getting restricted. You will have skin discoloration as part of this. I was pretty far back in the room and I could see some of this on stage. And you should pay attention to that. But what's the real problem and where you need to act in a hurry is nerve damage. And explained about how the ways that what's being done in the course of of doing the rigging can restrict nerve flow, and pinch nerve endings and that sort of thing, and can cause long-term harm very quickly. And that was something which I didn't necessarily think. It never comes up when people talk about this sort of thing, or like I'll say is it comes up when the people who are having this serious conversation and are knowledgeable in the field talk about it. But when it comes to the general popular culture conversation about any sort of BDSM stuff, nerve damage isn't the thing that people come to think about. So that's useful to know. And it kind of gives you a moment of like was some examples it gave for like pinching and that sort of thing around the wrists and fingers and that sort of thing. Like I know the symptoms of carpal tunnel syndrome. I've had to deal with do exercises and get assistive equipment and wrist rests for my keyboard and my mouse and that sort of thing. And I'm going as this moment like so I didn't ask about this because there wasn't really the time, but like okay, if you have carpal tunnel syndrome and shibari is probably not for you, which was an interesting moment to come to in terms of someone who works in an IT field and works in has to think about in some cases with my workspace and having things in a situation where I can minimize the amount of harm that is done to my hands over the long-term usage of my electronic devices. Last one was 18 plus Anime Jeopardy. Long story short, I ended up competing, placed second overall. I don't know if they're going to put up a video of this or not. If they do, watch my social media on Blue Sky. I may post a link there. And then finally for today on Sunday, only a couple panels I went to before closing ceremonies. There was a panel about the history of clamp yaoi. It honestly wasn't actually that too far off from it's a different person giving it, but from a history of clamp panel that I went to back in Vancouver. Or maybe it might have been early Oregon Convention Center at Kumoricon, where, because like it's the focus of the panel was to a certain degree more on clamp manga with same-sex romantic relationships, particularly weighted in favor of same-sex male romantic relationships. That said, this did go a little bit more into some of Clamp's doujinshi work, particularly their JoJo Bizarre Adventure doujinshi, and their original character of let me pull this back up so I have the character name. Character name of sorry about this taking a second. Of Jota Kujo, who is really that was fun to read that character's story and learn about them. Like basically the unofficial from these manga, like this is the egg baby basically. If you're familiar of Clamp's JoJo history, this is the child that came out of the of the Dojin with the Kakyoin and Jotaro egg baby. Long story short, they made sequels or sequels. That character grew up and got a bunch of their own stories, complete with their own stand. And Jota even has the Joseph Joestar hat hair, where you look at the back of their head, you can't tell where the hat begins, where the dividing line is between the hat and the hair. It's like I started like, oh, like I didn't know how far down this rabbit hole went. I want to know. I don't know if all these manga have been translated, but they need to be. That was really fun. Other than that, went to, and also I mentioned this came out way before Stone Ocean did. Clamp's version of Josuke's Kid predates Jolene. That said, as all things considered, Jolene fits much more into the JoJo paradigm to a certain extent, particularly considering the character's name is itself a song reference. So like it works. Last panel I went to before closing ceremonies was another Lisa Friedman panel about ties between Japan and Oregon. If I have a complaint about the panels for Lisa Friedman, and this is not a problem with her, it is like a general scheduling thing, is she just doesn't get enough time. She comes up, says, oh yeah, I'm panel. I have I'm going to kind of race through these. I have 75 slides. And I'm like, oh my God. Please put up a QR code at the start of this panel so I can view that, so I can select that and get a link to your slide deck on Google Drive or something so I can come back and read all the stuff later that you didn't have a chance to get to because they only gave you an hour and you had it, and you get potentially 90 minutes or more of material. In any case, great panel. Other final notes to kind of wrap things up. Next year's Kumoricon is the weekend of Halloween, which is where they're returning to. When Kumoricon started at the Oregon Convention Center, we were at Halloween and we had that for a few years. We're back there. I love having Kumoricon around Halloween, not just because it encourages people to do horror film programming, but also there's this sense of like it encourage because it's in and around Halloween, and with it you have like the whole thing of dressing up for Halloween. It gives a whole new spice to cosplay, with all the cosplay stuff, because it encourages people like, hey, I don't normally cosplay. I'm gonna cosplay for I'm going to bust out for Kumoricon this year, or I'm gonna make. All right, I cosplay normally. I'm definitely going to cosplay Kumoricon this year because it's Halloween, and I love it. Last thing is to help mitigate line issues coming out of closing ceremonies for pre-registration for the next con, because normally what they do is they give you a on sale window at the end of the convention for registering for the next year at a significantly reduced rate. They had it set up with a QR code and a website, so you could, and then signs posted, so you could just go. I could just like when I went to Elisa Friedman's last panel, those signs are up with the QR code, so I just scanned that with my phone, sat down in the panel very quickly without being distracted too much from what she was saying, because she was doing her lead up, which I heard a couple times before. I was registered. I got the registration process done in about 5 minutes, and it's great. Like if you still have to do cash for it, then you have they're set up after closing ceremonies, but otherwise you're good to go. And even if you want to wait until after closing ceremonies, you can, and if you're still doing payment by card and you've got your phone, you just scan your phone, go off to one of the like tables or that sort of thing, sit down, deal with your payment, and you're done. You're not in line. You're not causing problems there. It's a great thing. I don't know if Otakon or Anime Expo or Anime Weekend Atlanta do anything like that, but if they aren't, they should. It makes a lot of sense. So that's everything. That's my Kumoricon Con report. If you went to Kumo this year, post your comments and what you enjoyed doing, what panel that I missed that I should have gone to, that post about those panels in the show notes. What artist in Artist Alley did you really like? All that fun stuff. So that pretty much covers everything. Catch you next time.
Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe. And also consider backing my Patreon. Patreon backers get episodes up to 1 week early of this show and any future Let's Plays. Also, please consider backing my Ko-fi. Tossing me a few bucks also helps support the show, and it's not a monthly obligation or anything like that.